I'm Mike Hall, the Executive Director of the Three Rangers Foundation, and through our missions and programs, we are supporting the Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life initiative by providing experience, guidance, and vetted resources to current and veteran Rangers and their families. We support the 75th Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life programs by providing benchmark transition assistance to current and veteran Rangers. We maintain transition counselors at each Ranger Battalion, offering timely and personalized support to the regiment's transition Big Five, which is mentorship and networking, education, financial wellness, VA benefits, and holistic fitness and wellness. Central to our approach is our extensive mentorship program, leveraging a network of about 10,000 formal and informal former members of the 75th Ranger Regiment to enhance opportunities and ensure Rangers thrive in their post-military lives. These meaningful relationships allow both mentors and mentees to stay connected to the Ranger community and benefit from shared experiences and guidance. Transition is a lifelong event. Today, we're going to hear experiences and mentor advice from Ranger Network mentor Anthony Zeruto, a longtime friend of mine, who's going to talk a little bit about IT and cyber and maybe how he got into that in the first place. Anthony, it's great to catch up with you, and thanks for all you do giving back. I mean, one of our most active mentors. Talk to Rangers probably just about at least once a week. Why don't we start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your military career and your Ranger career, uh, and then what you've done since you've gotten out?
Okay, thanks, Mike. And thanks for giving me an opportunity to give back to an organization of which I am always so grateful for. So many of my successes I attribute back to my experience in the Ranger Regiment. So I tell folks that I was the modern day Forrest Gump in the Army. I was an infantry officer, branch detail to MI, and I could have landed anywhere in the Army. And out of Ranger School, I landed in a battalion called the White Devils to work for this very young and dashing lieutenant colonel named Stan McChrystal. And my brigade commander was John P. Abizade. And so you could say the rest is history. I landed with what I considered, the most incredible officer, leader, mentors in the Army. And so I had a great experience with General McChrystal. From there, as an infantry guy, I actually had a rope date to go to 275 as an infantry guy, but MI branch wouldn't let me. And
Mm.
I ended up going to Vicenza as my first intel duty assignment, and I was convinced I was going to get out. And looking back on it now, I thought it was an off chance, but we were in Grafenwehr, and this '06 approaches this young captain, and I make it out, and it's Colonel McChrystal. And he says, "Hey, Anthony, we're thinking of standing up something called an MI detachment at the Ranger Regiment. Are you interested?" And I said, yes. And so that's how I ended up in a Ranger Regiment. And you were on my board. And Jim Blaze and I, Master Sergeant Blaze, we called it the Bad News Bears. We started out with about
Yeah.
30 MI guys. And it's now an MI battalion. So that was my beginning at the Rangers, MI detachment, 3rd Ranger Battalion S2. I left for CGSC 82nd, came back. I was the RS2. Then I went to the Special Mission Unit in Northern Virginia. Spent about 3.5 great years there with other fellow Rangers. Detailed to CIA, and then I ended up commanding NSA Georgia, and then retired out of Army Cyber as the director of operations for all our Army Cyber. And Army Cyber at the time was relatively new, but responsible for full spectrum cyber operations for the Army. And so, how I ended up in the cyber IT, as you and I have talked before, uh, prior to this thing called cyber, it was called signals intelligence, and signals intelligence fell under the intel officer. And it really wasn't that big a deal unless you were assigned to an NSA affiliated MI unit. But during our time at JSOC, the two became more and more involved with the SIG and IT as the threat moved towards that way to communicate. So our find fix finish or the find fix that the two was heavily involved with was heavily based in signals intelligence, and that's kind of how I ended up in that kind of side of the house and ended up with NSA Georgia. The last thing I'll share about that was at a certain point, Joe Alexander, the director of NSA, and others figured out that while we had the capability to do that type of signals intelligence, to find fix the cyber stuff. What we lacked was the capacity to do it at scale, and that's really what gave birth to this thing called U.S. Army Cyber Command, U.S. Cyber Command. It was really to scale and be able to do that to scale. And of course, the last 5 or 10 years, it's really become its own. And I don't have to tell folks here on the net how important it is to keep your IT stuff secure. So that's how I ended up in cyber in the Army. And then when I got out, and I'll talk about lessons learned. At the time, my daughter was graduating high school at Georgia, and for me, the most important thing was location. So I took a job with a company called Unisys. It's my first job in post Army as I don't want to say a sales rep, but as a business development capture for a technology that touched the IC in the military. And then through relationships, Brigadier General retired Marty Schweitzer, you know, ended up one day saying, "Hey, I'm going to retire, and I've got this small company." At the time, it was about 40 people, and he said, "Hey, are you interested?" Kind of like McChrystal. He said, "Hey, are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah." And I've been the president and CEO of Network Designs now. I'm on my 7th year.
That's pretty neat. We certainly don't have time, and unfortunately, not the purpose of what we're talking about today. But what most people don't realize is the stand up of the MI detachment is what is not probably it's one of the biggest factors that took the Ranger Regiment from being a brigade strike force to being a capability that no other organization. Within our higher headquarters
Yeah,
or the National Command Authority really had before. And that started with that that MI detachment, and then they obviously became very involved with so many other operations. But it started right there, and then here you are when Cyber Command, the concept really stood
yeah,
up, and its offensive and defensive capabilities really came to the forefront. And now, most would say, I mean, that's one of the most powerful weapons of war that we have right now over our adversaries. So it's and of course it takes a guy like you who can think out of the box, and of course it all makes sense because you started as an infantry officer and we rejected you, and that's how it all worked out. But yeah, so yeah, very very interesting, and I hope people reach out to you to get some more of that and hear the stories because they're very interesting. And everybody thinks that the Ranger Regiment is what it is, and it's always been that way, and it hasn't been. So it's those capabilities that has taken it, a- and really the reason why the Ranger Regiment will always be around. Quite
that's
frankly,
right.
it will be. We'll always have the best infantry. We'll always have the best strike forces. We'll always have the best non-commissioned and commissioned officers to do things better, faster, better. But at the end of the day, relevance is something that you have to prove every day, and that is a capability that nobody else has, and they continue to evolve as I think you know. Uh, but let's get back into to some mentor advice here. What do you tell Rangers when they say, I have limited or no information on technology or cyber experience, but I'm interested in pursuing that in the civilian world. What should I do to prepare? And as you know, we have a lot of, infantry
Yeah.
guys and I mean, the Ranger Regiment's full of smart guys, and they want to get into cyber, and they have really no experience whatsoever. And I send a lot of them to talk to you. So what do you tell them?
Yeah. Hey, and I really, really enjoy it. And it is a paid political announcement. This here in end of May, we start our second NDI college internship, and we've got 2 Rangers, one from the Ranger Communications Company, and then one from Second Ranger Battalion that'll be here for a 12-week program. So I enjoy talking to them. Like you said, I talk to a lot of them. So the first thing that I would say, and if you're watching this video, you really want to have this conversation, ideally 2 years out, but certainly outside of a year. And so the first thing I would share is if you're interested in IT, and I'm speaking from the vantage point of supporting government, IT, and cybersecurity. I do not have familiarity into what it would take to have a job at Amazon or one of those big companies. And so I'm speaking from if you want to go work for the state as a cybersecurity or IT, or if you want to go to the government. So the first thing I would tell you, you got no IT experience, talk to someone who does. So if you're in a Ranger battalion, go talk to your SIGO and ask him if, hey, as I'm getting ready to transition and thinking about transition, are there things that I can get involved with that I can help with? Or are there things that you can teach me? What you're trying to do at this point is you need a minimum of 2 years experience, and it really doesn't matter what. And so I tell the young Rangers, get involved early, try to start doing something before you get out of the Army that you can touch and feel and start kind of developing, hey, I like this and I don't like that. Um, the second thing that I talk to them about is, this thing, this sometimes a love affair of IT certifications. I'm not a big fan. It's kind of like, hey, you got your Ranger tab, that's great, but now you're in a Ranger regiment, it's a little bit different. And so you have to get your Ranger tab, right? So the first thing I would tell them is get a PMP, project management professional. And the reason I tell them that is if you're an E4 and E5 in a Ranger regiment, you have certainly gone and run a range. That's a project. You have gone through the steps to get you from, hey, Sergeant Zeruto, you got to run range this range in a month, and you got to do this. And the reason I tell people to get PMP is they're not really going to teach you anything you don't know, but what they're going to teach you is the civilian dialect, how to speak as a civilian, and how to organize a project. And so for me, as a young Ranger, certainly enlisted coming out, getting a PMP, it opens a lot of doors because you have that Ranger mindset that's going to make you incredibly successful already. You just got to get your foot in the door, and having that PMP get your foot in the door. And it could be anything from managing a warehouse, IT, to managing, a contract out overseas. So PMP for me, I highly recommend for the young Rangers. The second one is, the IT. What IT search should I get? Well, it depends. What do you want to do? And that's a one-on-one conversation. And then so you've got experience, you've got the certs, and then of course the last leg is education. Um, I tell you, a college degree is good, but I have lots of folks making great money, money that I did not know existed as an '06, right? We got 25-year-old kids making more money than full-bird colonels in the Army with no college degree. So it's a nice to have. So that's what I tell the young soldiers to prep before they get out. The other thing that I share with them is if your family dynamics support this and you have the 911 or the GI Bill, I tell them, hey, you need to take tactical patience. You have a tactical pause. I know you just want to jump right in and do cyber stuff, but I would tell them to really look at colleges and universities that have this thing called a co-op program. So I started out at Georgia Tech, and I did not do the program, but every one of my friends that did landed great jobs. And basically, the way it works is you get accepted to the college, for example, computer sciences or computer engineering, and you go to school for one semester, and then the next semester you basically interview and get hired by a company. And so the next semester you go and work for that company, and it's almost always the same company for those 4 years. And so as your education in IT and cyber increase, so do your position of responsibility. So your university experience goes from 4 to about 6 years. GI Bill 911 pays for it. And you've got that stipend to live off. And then when you're working for Amazon or wherever, you're getting paid salary commensurate with your stuff. And so if you're patient, to me, that is the best foundation to be able to set up. And my audience now is a E4 to E6 Ranger who perhaps doesn't have a college degree, has limited IT. Go get your degree, go get the co-op and get that. That's really the best way to do this if you're at that level.
Yeah, certainly great advice, and advice I've heard from other experienced folks also. So definitely spot on. Education's it's a funny thing. Do you need it to succeed in specific fields? The answer is no. But how do you know what you're going to end up doing?
Yeah,
So it's certainly a good backup to have, because if you just, I like to tell people that the days of getting into a job and retiring 30 years later with a gold watch, they don't exist anymore. I mean,
that's
you're
right.
you're going to be end up doing something else. And quite frankly, Rangers get bored easily.
Yeah,
They'll get into something. I mean, and that's why, so many guys join the regiment. They have no idea of, no inclination at all of becoming a career soldier. They just want to come in and they enjoyed it, and they could do it forever, but they want to go do something else. They want a different challenge. And I think it's the same thing when you get out. It, but what about 25s and 17s, guys that have cyber experience?
yeah.
Is what do you tell those guys something different, or
Yeah,
how do they
I
prepare for
do. I do
decision?
tell them something. It's you get to the same end state after several years, but they're starting down a different path. So to them, I tell them, one, make sure that your certifications are up to date, right? And so a lot of these certifications require, and I forget what it's called, you gotta every month or so or every quarter, you gotta do so many hours. So make sure your certifications are straight. The second thing that I talk to them about is make sure that they understand what kind of where they want to land, at least initially, right? When you look at, even for me, I lasted 11 months in my first post-army job, and I think that's pretty typical. 11 to 18 months. And it made me think when you and I were talking about the other day, and I forget, when we went to Ranger School and you left the forward line of troops, it had an acronym where everybody would take a knee, take their patrol caps off, and just listen.
Security hall.
Yeah, but I had another acronym to listen, right? And so
Oh,
to me, that's really what your post-army career is. You really want to get across the flot, do your security hall, and you want to get a feel for the environment. It's just completely different, and where you land is not where you're going to end up. And you're going to land in jobs. And you're like, wow, I'm really enjoying where I'm at, but I didn't know that this existed, and my interests are really there, and it'll allow you to move. So the first thing I'll tell them is define what you want to do when you get out, because you're going to be pursued as, hey, we want you to do business development and capture. We want you to be a forward rep for a technology, to get that into the government spaces or to commercial spaces, right? And a lot of when I was getting out, I was like, well, I'm never going to do sales. I'm never going to do that stuff. But the reality is, whether you are that young ranger who's just getting out and going through that process I talked about earlier, or you're a seasoned, when you get into the commercial world, you're always going to do the same three things. You're always going to do business development. You're always going to try to capture new business. You're always going to run a project, because if you don't, the company that's paying you the money, you want to be of value to the company in a different way. And so, do you want to go BD capture, or do you really want to do IT work where you're a program manager or project manager, taking complex problems and driving successful outcomes, right? And so, for me, for those getting out, I think that's the biggest decision. And some personalities do really great at the BD capture. Others are better at the project manager, and both have their pros and cons. And so I walked the Rangers through that. The second piece is, hey, where do you want to live? And that's oftentimes the most important. And then, typically, generally, if I were to generalize, this candidate that is heavy IT, cyber, and has all the certs, typically have a family, they've got college and stuff. So where do you want to live? And then the third piece to me is the most important aspect to a successful transition is finding a company where you either know the people you're going to work for, or the culture that that company represents, at least initially, is one that you're comfortable with. Don't pursue the money. You got to pay the bills. You got to make the money, but don't let that be a driving factor. So those are kind of the two paths. And at the end, post Army, at about 5 to 6 years, they meet. You're basically at the same level. And like I told you earlier, my chief architect at NDI, who is just an amazing talent for a lot of the attributes that we attribute to Rangers, was an E5 Marine who ran, the IT for SOX and Fallujah. And, he's been out for about 10, 15 years, and he's doing exceptionally well. And I certainly see that track for any Ranger that gets out in the IT cyber field.
Yeah, so both of those categories, everybody gets out of the army. It's a matter of when. And as you go through these conversations with guys, I mean, we tell our counselors, I mean, your job is not retention NCOs, to try to talk guys to staying in the army, and it's certainly not to tell them, the grass is green on the other side. You need to get out all these jobs, So it's really a matter of helping guys decide when is the right time. So do you sort of go through that with the guys as they sort of tell you, what they think they want to do and talk, this is, let's figure out what the right time is for you to transition?
Yeah, they candidly know, most of them already know they were going to transition. But, from my experience and going back to the Forrest Gump, I had 24 years and I had never touched the Pentagon. I didn't know what a GOSC was, a General Officer Steering Committee. And because I was cyber IT and because of what was going on at the world, I was a fly on the wall. And for Dan Allen, who was the Battalion 2 for, who was the vice chief. And I didn't know that when a 4-star said to do something and everybody rogered out, that meant that they had to have a 1-star general officer review what he said, and then the 2-star general officer had to review what they said, and a 3-star. And I had no idea the Army operated that way. And so I literally came in on a Tuesday and sent an email to Lieutenant General Cardone and said, "I'm tired, I'm done." And that was it. And so what I tell folks is, hey, you'll know. I really think, I don't know what your experiences are. You just know, and I marvel that folks like you and General McChrystal and General Abizaid, who just, but when you gotta, when it's your time. And so that's what I tell them. I tell them, don't be in a rush to get out. The Army, the Ranger Regiment in particular, it's an amazing place to live and work. But when you know it's time and you're not providing value added, if you're getting up in the morning and you're not like, certainly, I think I speak for every Ranger, where, I'd get up and I was raring to go to work, 4:30, 5 o'clock. I was there off of, wherever it was at Benning, the interstate, at the Dunkin' Donuts, meeting half a 3rd Ranger Battalion, grabbing their coffee and route to PT. So, yeah.
Now, your experience since you got out is mostly supporting state and federal government contracts. How does government and contracting hiring criteria? I mean, how does that work? What's the
Yeah.
progression? I mean, how does that
Yeah.
work out there? Because that seems to be it's not as easy as, from what I hear, it's not as easy as people think. You just sign up to, the government has different rules.
Yeah. No, so it's a great question. And so, in the Army, everyone's familiar, and I'm starting to forget what the 10 level, 20 level, 30 levels. I mean, I'm forgetting so much of the Army, but in the government spaces, there's this acronym called LCAT, labor category. And the labor category does two things. It quantifies, hey, if you're an E4 Grenadier of Infantry, these are the things that you need to be able to do. These are the backgrounds, right? Or perhaps if you're a squad leader, infantry squad leader, it defines the categories and the qualifications that you must have attained to reach that rank. Well, labor categories work the same way. And typically the lowest labor category for IT cybersecurity, think manning a help desk, requires 2 years 2 years minimum experience. Now, what it doesn't say is kind of a blank check with regards to experience, right?
Yeah.
And so this is why when I talk to the young Rangers, I said, okay, you have no experience right now. Get with your SIGO and start the clock. Start the clock. You're able to say ethically that, for a year, I was the whatever it was for my SIGO. That's 1 year of experience, right? So it's really that 2 year mark. And then on the certifications, it's a really low bar, right? And it depends on where you're at. I think I sent you a slide a while back that had by positions, what are these types of certifications, and I'll
Yeah.
walk them through that. And
Yeah.
then college, the 4 year degree, one, it doesn't really matter what it's in. I got a degree in math, ended up in the 82nd counting sandbags for Hurricane Andrew. And so that was good advanced math. And so it doesn't really matter. So experience is the big one, and then certs. And so the the company, battalion, brigade, or the brigade, division, corps echelon within IT and cybersecurity is, you come in as an apprentice, and that's my word, a 2 year, and so you're going to work for a project manager, and typically a project manager has 4 to 5 years experience, and they're responsible for about five. It's a squad leader, about 5 to 8 folks, right? Um, and then they're manning the project. Within that organization, there'll be a program manager, and a program manager is that next level up, and he or she has 5 to 6 or 7 project managers. So the program manager now is leading a corporate initiative within a major government um, wing, and that program manager has about 60 to 100 people under them. So those are like the three major ones. You come in and you work for a project manager. You graduate to become a project manager in charge of 5 to 7, and then your projects increase, and then you end up being a program manager. For example, we have a lot of work at the Department of Justice, and interestingly enough, the majority of that work there, which I found interesting, is TSSCI. And so we run the modernization for the criminal division at DOJ, for the antitrust, for the immigrations. Each one of those has a program manager, and below them there's about 5 to 7 project managers, and then so those are 3 echelons. What makes her? And I don't know if we want to get into. I don't know if that answers. You want me to expand on anything else?
No, it does
Yeah.
because again, guys get out and I want to get into cyber. It's like, well, what is that? I mean,
Yeah.
and to explain basically how the organization works, I think is really valuable. And a lot of guys, they'll talk to the counselors and they say, I want to be a program manager, a project manager, and it's like, well, you just don't get out, and that's what you're gonna do. I
That's
mean,
right.
there's a way to do it. So, yeah, I think that's
And I
great.
think it's also, at least for this area here, I think DC is a plus 20%. But typically, the salary, right, for a 2 year minimal experience IT is plus or minus 80K a year, right? And then as you progress to a project manager, the project manager here is between 120 and 150. And you get a young ranger that's got that ranger mindset that sua sponte's everything, and because we got the internet, goes, what's this, looks it up in the internet, fix it. He or she very quickly becomes a project manager,
Yeah.
and then the program manager, you're at 2 plus. It depends on the program. And so for the young rangers going out, I tell them, hey, you have a potential career to last you for another 30 years and stay on top of it and make a good living.
I'll ask this specifically to you, but I'm sure it applies to other companies. I mean, uh, Network Designs Inc. is, I guess, has been around about 7 years, I think, something like that. And I mean, you support DoD, DOT, the FAA, DOJ, the FBI, and numerous other organizations. what are you looking for that makes that guy valuable to your organization or to any other company? Because I mean, obviously you work with
Yeah.
lots of other companies. I'm sure either as subcontracts or alongside, or you see what they're doing. What qualities are is that
Yeah, yeah,
you're
that's a
looking
good
for?
question. So NDI's actually been around for 30 years. We
Oh, okay.
celebrate 30 years this summer. Two founders who started this
I
in
said
in the
7 years. I'm at
garage.
dog years, but go ahead.
I've been here 7 years. And it's been a ride. We were 50 or so folks. We're 400 plus now, and we're continuing to grow. Listen, at the end of the day, it, it's the Ranger mindset, right? It's you get up in the morning and you show up to work, and you're not punching the clock, and you're identifying issues, and you're not coming up to your boss. You're not coming up to your project manager and say, "Hey, this is all broken or this is wrong." You're coming up to your project manager and say, "Hey, I identified this and it's already fixed, right? It's the Ranger mindset, right?" And and to me, um, I know who those, I may not know them by name, but I know who those folks are across three or 400 folks. Because they're differentiators, and much like when we were in the military, I mean, the growth for NDI, leadership is a pacing item, and once a year we get together, and I ask every one of my project managers, who's your number one person to replace you, and so on and so on and so forth. Because as we grow, I need to do that, and so I tell my Rangers, your experience as a 75th Ranger Regiment member who is just a way of life that your superior says, go do this, and you say, Roger, and you just leave. And it's kind of like the message to Garcia. You're not asking about, hey, where do I do? No, you say Roger, and you take that, to me, is exponentially more valuable than any IT cert or any experience that you're going to have. And so when I tell them is, don't forget where you came from, because it's that got you through the assessment process and got you to be successful in the Ranger Regiment, where there was a 3-year tour, or folks that do 30 years. That's the differentiator, and people will see it. They'll see it immediately. And again, especially in an environment now where you don't know how to do something, you get on the internet and you actually watch a video like what we're doing now, and you go, okay, I get it. I'm going to go do that now and take care of this. I think that mindset is, it's sua sponte. Roger that. I got it. I got it, boss. I want you to do. I want you to do this. Got it. That's all I need to know. I think that's a big differentiator. And listen, I think I told you, I hired a former Ranger, Gavanda Soyak. I didn't know him when he was in a Ranger Regiment, but when I went to Task Force Orange, he was my Sergeant Major there and Rick Russo.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember Rick. It was Rick. It was replaced by G. Um, I hired him NDI here about a year ago, and I just made him my chief of contracts. I had no idea that his last job in the unit was managing the contracts as a contracts officer representative. And over the last 8 months, I mean, because he's got the Ranger mindset, he ran circles over my prior one, who had been here 20 plus years and could recite the federal regulations backwards. But gee, like every Ranger was, where, where'd you go? Well, I drove down to the organization. I found her boss and her boss's boss. I asked for an office call, and we got it all squared away, right? It's that mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot here as a boss, but a question we get from a lot of guys, because in the military we understand 100% what loyalty means. But then you get out and it's a little bit different. And, as leaders, we always want to keep our best people, and we know how we keep our best people is to take care of them. But by taking care of them, making sure they get the education and up, sometimes that means, giving them opportunities. So, how would you describe what loyalty is or what you're looking for, realizing that no one's going to stay there for 30 years
Yeah.
and get that gold watch. How would you describe how they should carry themselves and what loyalty is, and at the same time trying to better themselves?
Yeah, I would tell folks that loyalty doesn't, it's different here on the other side. Loyalty is to yourself and your family, right? And that's
Great.
that's the first thing that I would tell them because I'd like to think NDI is a little bit different. Certainly the major companies are too big, but loyalty is to you and your family. It, if you're just straight with your boss, they're going to back you up. I mean, my first boss out of the army was a guy named Chris Close. I was like, oh my God, there's a civilian McChrystal. I mean, he was a great boss. And
Yeah.
when I told him that I had this NDI opportunity at 11 months after he had vested, he was more excited about it than I was. It's been 7 years, and he's in my office, and he's moved on from his job, and so you touch you've led me down a different path that I don't think was part of the questions. We talk about how in a Ranger Regiment relationships really matter, and certainly as you mature. I remember General Allen told me once. He goes, "Anthony, you're not going to realize this is when I got promoted major. You're not going to realize this until you're older, but you don't get promoted by boards. You get promoted by your peers." And that stuck with me. And certainly I ended up where I ended up because I met General McChrystal in 92, and then I met other people, and it was the network of networks. I think it's even I think it's even more important in the civilian world. I mean, the IT cybersecurity here in the Washington DC Beltway is as small and tight as JSOC is. And when you do somebody over wrong, it goes. Now you may get hired at the next job because they got to fill a gap, right? But it goes. But the other side is equally powerful. When people go, yeah, I don't know that guy, but I know of him or her. Um, so to me, it's be straight up with your boss, be candid, be professional, and if you've been in the civilian side, you know that most people coming out are going to spend a year or two and they're going to move out. And they also realize that I may be working for you. So the guy that I went to work with at Unisys is now my chief operating officer, Lance. And I loved Lance. The minute I got over and I got to NDI, I said, Lance, I got to get you back here, right? So I worked for him. Now it works for me. That's the difference in the commercial world, right? The military is hierarchical, right? But Krista would never work for me in the army, but ever. But here in commercial, it's a little different. So yeah, that's what I would tell them. Be loyal to yourself. You put in your time, your family sacrifice, your kids sacrifice more than maybe perhaps you'll ever appreciate. The days of missing birthdays and all that stuff, that's no longer the case. That's the priority number one. And it's funny, the commercial world understands that. Well, they don't understand it to be any different, right? You come into the commercial world and say, "Hey, boss, I've my daughter's got a recital. I'm going to miss tomorrow's QTB." They're like, "Okay." You can't tell the boss you're going to miss the QTB tomorrow because you got a recital. You don't even think that way. So yeah, that's a long about way of telling you or sharing with the team is, hey, you've paid your dues. Be loyal to yourself and your family, and just be straight with your boss. Do the right thing, like we always preach when nobody's looking. Sua sponte, be the person that solves things, and when it's your time to a better paying job or a location that's better or a job that's better, just knock on his door. Hey, boss, I just got an offer that I'm really considering. And I guarantee you, he's going to say, man, what can I do to help? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna ask, I'm not probably, I'm gonna ask Caroline to pull this last sequence out as a standalone. It's really a great
Yeah.
answer on what loyalty means and how important. And then some guys will say, well, yeah, I'm worried about burning a bridge. And my answer to that is always, well, if you've been transparent with them, you're probably not going to burn a bridge. But if you burn a bridge and you have been transparent with them, you really got to go, man, I got out of there just in time. Because you probably
That's
didn't want to
right.
work for that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
right.
yeah. Well, you're great at helping folks, and that's why you've got a
Yeah.
great organization. People want to work with you. Anything else? Any advice on how you found your purpose? Why you have more good days than bad days, and how that balance all goes, or anything
Yeah.
specific to cyber or IT, or just close us out.
Yeah, the good days and the bad days are still there. I think that what really is different is, when it is the bad days, it doesn't compare to the potential repercussions of having a real bad day in the Ranger Regiment that we just left. No one's getting killed, no one's living through stuff like that. And so yeah, it's it's been a lot of fun, Mike, being on this other side. And the other thing, the last thing I'll share is I do a lot of stuff with DoD and others. I told you about a lot of stuff in the classified space. Um, I believe that our organization, NEI, is still very much in the fight, right? We're still very much supporting the war fighter. We designed the first enterprise solution at Bragg, and then we wrote a white paper. The Army, we briefed the Pentagon, the Army adopted it, and so it's a SIPR over public infrastructure on a laptop. And
Mhm.
so we're standing up nodes in JBLM, Bragg, Hawaii, South Korea, RF John, Kuwait, and Germany, building nodes so that the warfighter can literally grab a laptop and log on your SIPR. What was secondhand to us at the regiment at JSOC, but now it's for big Army.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I would tell the young Ranger, if you get out and you come into the federal spaces, you're still going to be giving back to the government, and in many ways back to the Army that you came from. When I was reading through your links, I actually saw General Bednarik speak, and then I forget the other three-star. He's over at SOC. That's a whole other funny story. But I've never seen a government contractor not want to give the best to the government. I've yet to meet that person. And what I would share with the young soldiers as you're getting out, you have a perspective of what's going on the ground. You have even a stronger ability to deliver better outcomes now that you're out to what they're doing, because you're building something that they may need. So yeah.
Yeah, it was General Frank Helmick, I think is who you're
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, Helmick. Hey, quick vignette, and this doesn't have to be recorded. So when I was in infantry, we were going to jump into Haiti, Port-au-Prince International Airport, and General Avisade had the airfield right and so 10 minutes later, General McChrystal's battalion was going to jump out, and we were going to meet at the lead edge of the at the drop zone, and then because of his relationship, he was going to meet with task force down the road at Cedrus's compound as a relief place. So McChrystal went down and said, "Hey, Skip Lewis, I want Zeruto to jump to Steiner Aid, and you get to pick one person, right?"
Yeah.
So I went out. I went out on with the initial out the door. It never happened, but for the rehearsal, put the Steiner Aid. So, anyways, the night that we were ready to jump in, because I was going in not with 275, I was going with Helmick's battalion, which I think was the other one. And I was scared. I was scared as hell. I was really scared. So I get in there and they asked me to sit right next to Helmick. And I need to tell Helmick this because I know he works associate. And I get seated next to him, and I'm sitting there in front of whatever the intel guy was briefing. And I feel like a hole burning in my head because Helmick's right next to me. And you remember he had big guns and his
Yeah.
veins would pop, right? I don't know him that well, but I'm gonna tell him as I see it. And I look at him and he's like about to like jump me, and I have no idea what I did wrong, and he keeps looking down at the floor. You remember those little styrofoam coffee cups that we would get from the
Yeah.
apparently when I sat down I had tipped it over with my boot, and he was ready to throw down on me, and I was like, we're getting ready to jump into war in 3 hours, and you're mad because I spilled your coffee. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was my experience with General Helmick. uh,
Well, it's a small world. That jump into Haiti and McChrystal's battalion was going to move and link up with the task force.
yeah.
Well, the person in the task force that he was supposed to link up was a Sergeant Major Michael Hall.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow,
Yeah, it's
what
a
a
small
small
world,
world.
because yeah, we had as it had planned, and he had come to the planning cell was out of Sabre Hall, Cobra Hall, whatever it's
Yeah,
called
yeah,
down
yeah.
there at Hunter Army Airfield. And so McChrystal had showed up, and I'd actually gone through RIP with him when I came back to battalion, and he had first got
Oh, wow.
to third battalion, and so we sort of were actually almost bunkmates. So that's where I met him again, and yeah, that's
Wow.
I was the guy that he was
Yeah,
supposed to.
yeah.
It was because I was the liaison NCO at 175 there at the time, and that was that was my mission, was to
So, so
link up
we
with his
said, and
battalion.
you may remember this, my fellow platoon leader, lieutenant at McChrystal's battalion, was a 175 enlisted, Kevin Quarles. And we said,
Kevin was one of my privates when I was a platoon.
yeah, yeah, I think I remember that. And so we sent Kevin Quarles, Lieutenant Kevin Quarles, and I think he was out there for your planning supplies. And you know that Kevin is the at Fort, is it Benning now, but he's the top civilian to the two-star. What is it? The assistant to the division commander, Kevin Quarles is.
Yeah,
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 that's so. What a small world.
it
Yeah,
is a small world.
yeah.
Well, thanks for your time.
Hey, I
Yeah,
really enjoyed this, Mike. Keep sending the young Rangers my way.
I certainly will.
Hopefully
Thanks for all you
next
do.
summer we'll have 3 or 4 more Rangers.
All right.
Be
Thanks
in
again.
touch.
Take
All
care.
right.
Rangers either way.